My name is Jim Caseman, and we're talking about my life's history. And we finally got myself saved and all that sort of stuff. And we'll hear from Kathleen. She had some tapes she made too before she went to heaven. But right now, we left off in the last session. We did our little trip to Shreveport, trying to be led by the Spirit. We ended up in North Dakota, did my 30 days, still didn't know where to go. We ended up back in Tulsa because we had not moved out of the house yet, because we didn't know where we were going to live. And so then I got the job back at Simcoe. A little bit of egg on my face because I told him I'm tired of this hot place. I'm going to go pasture. We'll see ya. Well, I went back to the hot place and just bit the bullet. He hired me right back and needed money for food and rent and everything. So then the camp meeting then, Brother Hagin had his camp meeting in those years at the Sheridan Hotel. And so I decided, well, I'm in town. Might as well attend the evening sessions. And met Pastor Hagin, that would, Pastor Hagin's son. And then he asked me how things were going. So I gave him the Shreveport report. I gave him the North Dakota report where I did my 30 days with the military. Still didn't know where to go. So I came back to Tulsa, moved back into the house, got the job at Simcoe, and figured I might as well attend the meetings. Well, then he told me, he said, hey, I got a letter from Minnesota. There's a group up there that wants to, they want a pastor for their church. And I gave the letter to Lee Morgans. Now, Lee Morgans was a classmate of mine at Rhema the first year. And sure enough, Lee Morgans shows up that night at the meeting. And I asked him about the letter that Pastor Hagin had given him. Had he followed up on it and contacted the people in Minnesota? And he said, no, he had not. He didn't feel impressed in his heart to do it. And wouldn't you know it, he's got the letter in his pocket. Well, he gave it to me, and all I know is I had a witness in my heart. This is it. Couldn't explain it, but I just knew this was it. And so then I called Minnesota right away. And of course, they wanted me to come up and try out. And they said they would, pray and fast. And of course, they would send me a ticket to fly up there and pay the expenses of going up there. And said that they would, and so I, after the camp meeting, I flew up there and I preached my little heart out. It was a church of 12 people. And it was a family church, and I didn't know anything about church government. I didn't realize how much family it was until later. This certain man and woman, husband and wife, and his nephew and wife, this was their church. But I really wasn't interested in church government. I just prayed that God would get me to a small church where I could practice preaching, because I didn't really know where to begin. Now, when we graduated from Rhema that spring, Brother Hagin got up in the pulpit. At that time, he just had a small stack of books that he'd printed. This is back in 74. And he said, if you don't know what to preach, he said, take my books. It should only take you 2 years to get the revelation that God's given me, and just preach out of these books. Well, I preached my little heart out with a little bit I knew. Can you believe that? Just for, 2 or 3 days, I think it was. And so they said, fine, you go back to Tulsa. We're going to fast and pray for 2 weeks, and then we'll let you know. And I thought to myself, 2 weeks? There's no sense doing that. I already know this is where I'm supposed to be. I had a real strong witness in my heart. So I went back to Tulsa, told Kathleen, I said, get the boxes out, start packing. I just know they're going to call at the end of 2 weeks and going to have me come up and pastor. Well, wouldn't you know it? 2 weeks later, right to the T, they invited us to move to Willmar, and we loaded the U-Haul truck. We headed north, and of course, they'd already told me that the church had a trailer house that was 12 wide, 60 foot long, and that they would provide that for us for housing. So that was a big blessing. And then, of course, when we got there, we found out we would get $100 a week. Well, to me, that was a lot of money, And So I did that, $100 a week, lived in this trailer. I thought it was big, but Kathleen had a different story. She said it was small. And of course, what do we have? 4 children, 2 adults, that's 6 right there. And then my brother ends up moving in with us shortly after that, so that's another adult. And he moved in with us from up north. And he had just gotten off of drugs and alcohol, and he lived with us for a time. And while, no, where are we? We're in Willmar, Minnesota, yeah. He lived with us for a while. And then then this 12-member church met in what's called the Labor Hall building. So things went on there on Saturday night, so you could still smell the smoke and the booze the next morning. It was just a kind of a stench. And so then we brought all of our children to church. Even Jonathan, he was still a baby. He slept underneath one of the chairs. And of course, babies never bothered me when I preached, or children. As I encourage people, bring your children, bring your babies. That's not going to disturb the anointing. And Kathleen at that time, believe it or not, she was more of an introvert. And she felt very uncomfortable talking to people. So she sat in the back. And just before the church service was over, she scooted out the back door and sat in the car and waited for me after I said goodbye to everybody and talked to everybody. And so then, a little later in the game, here are the church people now, particularly these 4 couples, especially the 2 older ones. They were wondering where I was getting all of my money from, because they saw our car parked out outside of Mr. Steak. So after church on Sunday morning, we had steaks one Sunday. And then they started saying to my wife, where are you getting all the money for your to dress the children as nice as you do? That's none of their business. Well, she confessed. She said, I go to the Salvation Army, and that's where I get my clothes. I get them real cheap. And then, of course, one day, the older man followed me home to the trailer house, and he proceeded to rant and rave that I was talking too much about faith. Whoa. So, also, I don't think they realized that I was getting some income from the military, because I'm still attending those weekend drills, but that was none of their business anyway. And so that's how it went. And so then, May of 1976, let's see, I started pastoring then. I graduated spring 1975. We accepted the job in Willmar, Minnesota with that small church. Started pastoring the fall of 1975. And now we're in the spring of 1976. And the first thing that happened was I was in prayer in April or so, and I felt led to resign my commission. I was a captain, and I was an officer. And so I resigned from the North Dakota Army National Guard. I felt that I couldn't do that, and I was traveling a lot and all this sort of stuff. And then the next thing that happened, I felt in my heart I was to leave the church. And I told Kathleen, she says, that's not God. Well, I said, I felt relieved because I had no reason to leave. I mean, the church had grown from 12 people to, I think it was 82. So it really increased in size. And I mean, that's nothing to complain about. But we had no reason, I had no excuse, except that we just feel led in our hearts to resign. So we resigned the end of May, and we gave him a notice, and so the end of June we left. And I don't know, I just felt there must be another church out there or something. So we traveled. Our stuff was, we put our stuff in storage in a town 50 miles away where Kathleen's sister is teaching school. And we just traveled, we just did our best to hear, what town, what state, where are we supposed to go? And we put on about 10,000 miles that summer. And we ended up coming back through Tulsa, camp meeting, ended up leaving there and heading right back to Minnesota again, the state that we just left. Stopped there at Alcoholics Anonymous, where I would do some teaching, because it was Alcoholics Victorious, and it was a Christian version. Kids went in and got all the cookies and were eating while I was talking to the lady out in the lobby. They hadn't anything to eat because we hadn't have any money to buy groceries. And but anyway, I'll pick up on that then in the next session. I see we're coming to an end of the 10 minutes. God bless you. Talk to you next time.